All right, what's going on, everyone? So today I'm really excited. I've got my Typhon 3S, Kraton 3S kind of mixture here, and I'm going to be putting some mods into it. We finally picked up the new steel diff gears, diff cups, differential yokes, and also the CVD slider set. Now, when I first heard about the Arrma 3S and 4S line, I wasn't really stoked about the plastic diff gears that they were using. Years back, I had a mini LST and I had plastic differential gears, and you trash them every single run. So I was expecting to basically have that with the Arrma 3S line. However, they have actually held up pretty well. And I'm kind of surprised by that. However, when I saw somebody tear it apart and I saw how big they were, it kind of made sense because they're a lot bigger, so they're able to kind of tolerate some of the abuse that these trucks put out. Now, of course, even though they are plastic and they have held up decently, there's still a lot of people out there that have had a few problems with it. If you're running 2S and, kind of 3S, it seems okay. But of course, 4S, that's really tough on the drive shafts as well as the differentials. Right now, part availability is kind of difficult and a struggle for the Arrma line between Hot Racing and Arrma itself. So they keep saying that they're going to have, CVDs out, upgrades, and metal diff gears, and it keeps getting pushed. But finally, I was able to get my hands on some Hot Racing diff gears, and so basically we'll be putting those in tonight. Originally, I didn't think I'd be able to get my hands on the CVD sliders either. However, I was able to find a few sets. For the 4S line, they're still not quite out yet, but for the 3S, at least for like the Senton, the Granite, and then the Typhon, if you are running slightly different axles, you can use these as well. Now, I'm not really going to be doing a how-to since there are other videos out there for pulling the diffs out and swapping the drive shafts and that kind of thing. So this is really going to be pulling them out, swapping them. I'll show you kind of the differences, and then of course we'll go out and beat on the truck. Starting out with the truck, this was a Typhon 3S, and I call it a mini Kraton or a Kraton 3S basically. I don't have the Kraton 4S arms, however, I've got pretty much everything else swapped out on it. And so, like I said, it's kind of my little mini Kraton, I call it. I'm running the Mamba X system along with the 1415 2400 kV censored motor, so I can run up to 6S in this truck. And then, of course, I've got all of my little part goodies over here. I went with the aluminum diff yokes because it seemed like there were people that were having issues where the bearings would be chewed up, from dirt and whatever, and then the metal, of course, would start spinning in place, and it would chew up the diff housing here, and then, of course, that would cause the diffs to strip out. So I picked those up to make sure I alleviate that. Of course, we've got the steel diff gears here. I've got that for front and the rear. The CVD slider set, these feel decent, but I'll be kind of going over that once I get the stock one swapped out. Now, I did have to pick up the aluminum diff case because this is required basically to work with their differential. Now, there is an Arrma part that you can get, but I figure since I'm swapping all this stuff out, I might as well go with the metal case to start with rather than having to wait until I trash the plastic one. Oh, and then lastly, I'm putting 30K fluid in there. I've seen anywhere from like 10 to like 60 or so. I might end up a little bit higher later on, but I've got 30K on hand, so I'll be using that for this build. All right, and I got the rear diff ripped apart here, and everything's looking pretty good on it. And like I said before, I mean, the differentials in these things are pretty big, which is really our saving grace here for why these plastic differentials, tolerate the abuse and seem to hold up okay. Now, in your bag from Hot Racing with the steel diff gears, you get a smaller little bag here, and it's got an O-ring. It's actually one O-ring, not two, like it looks because it's folded up. You get 2 pins and 2 little spacers. Now, I wasn't quite sure exactly where those were supposed to go. However, I did figure it out. So basically, as you assemble the differential, you're going to leave 2 of the factory pins out. And there are 2 extra longer pins that Hot Racing gives you. Those go in the deeper pocket, and then the little spacer will go on top of there. So then that way, when the ring gear is attached on there, it prevents that gear from moving up and down. All right, so I got the differential here assembled. Of course, make sure you're using thread lock on these screws. But otherwise, everything looks pretty good. It's a really solid, nice feeling unit. And here we go next to the factory one. Of course, size-wise and everything, it's going to be identical or darn close. But of course, with the Hot Racing, we have that spiral cut instead of the straight cut like the factory pieces. And then here's the little input gears, and again you can see that spiral cut on the hot racing one. And really, I mean, I think a lot of times when people had issues with these would start wearing down. I didn't see too many broken off, it just they would wear out, and then of course it would strip out once it wasn't contacting properly. Alright, so I got the rear differential put together, and this thing feels really solid. Now I really like the hot racing diff yokes. They're much nicer than the plastic ones. Plus you can kind of crank it down still and it holds its form so it doesn't pinch the gears, but everything on here feels really good. So differential should be just about bulletproof. You know, we have some weaker links in the truck, but at least for this, I mean, everything is pretty well put together. So really happy about that, and this should be a pretty good durable item to have. Next, however, I want to talk about the drive shafts. So let's pull out the stock one here. So here's the factory sliding drive shaft. Now, people usually have okay luck with the actual shaft itself. It seems to be like the very ends that are breaking on people. That's kind of where the wear and tear is, and that's where, of course, the pins are, and there's less material, so that kind of makes sense. And so, I mean, I don't really have that many runs on this drive shaft, and it's still got a little bit of play. Now, the other annoying thing about these is you need to have a long 2mm screwdriver in order to attach or remove these, which is kind of a pain in the butt. Of course, once you get the tool, it's pretty cheap. I've got a link down below. Then you're set, of course, but it's still annoying, you know, because your standard MIP drivers or whatever usually won't work with that. So other than the things breaking here, people seem to be okay with that. The end little piece is removable, so you can swap that out if that breaks. So yeah, but doesn't hold up super great. Now with the new CVD slider set here, they don't feel super great in the hand. They don't feel bad, but I mean, you can still see some of the, you know, machining mold marks on the plastic drive shaft itself. Now Arrma, for some reason, instead of making like a typical dog bone or CVD setup, they would do this half plastic, half metal combo. So hopefully it will hold up. I still think maybe some of the weaknesses are going to be where the metal connects to the plastic on the drive shaft, but of course time will tell. But otherwise the drive shafts, themselves feel pretty good. I like that the fact the pins on here have a little cap basically, so there's no set screws or anything like that. They're self-retaining, so once they're installed they can't really fall apart. If the pin breaks, of course, that's one thing, but you're not going to have to worry about a screw coming loose like we do sometimes with the MIP X2D drive shafts. Now, the other nice thing about these new CVD slider sets is that you don't have to have that screw in the middle here. They just have a regular little set screw. Now, the other thing, if you notice before on your differential, on the out drive here, there's a little flat spot where you can see where a screw or a set screw is supposed to go, and that lines up, of course, perfectly with these new drive shafts. So that makes it really easy to attach and detach if you do end up breaking something. The other nice thing is that these are completely rebuildable, so if you break apart, you don't have to get a whole new set. You can just get that little piece. So let's go ahead and pop these things in and start working on the front. Here this thing is, like I said, comes all apart, and once you pop the little retainer cover off, then you can take that pin out and replace just the end or just the drive shaft if we need. Now, because these are plastic in the middle here, I still don't think, of course, it's going to hold up super great to, you know, 6S if guys are going crazy. But I think with this current setup, we should hopefully be 3 and 4S, pretty reliable. But of course, time will tell. Now, once you get to the part where you're using your differential yokes and you're assembling everything, you want to make sure you're putting things in the proper order. So on the ring gear side, you're going to basically be using what we'll be using here. We're going to go ahead and take this thin, tiny little washer, put that over the ring gear just like so. Then you're going to be using one of your bearings, pop that in. At that point, you can go ahead and place that into the differential yoke. Perfect, nice and smooth. Next up, you've got your pinion gear. Go and put that on there, and you can see fits in there quite nicely. And lastly, we're going to be taking this bearing here, pop it onto the other side of the cup here, and then go and put your remaining side of the differential yoke together. Now, another reason that I really like these differential yoke cases from Hot Racing is you can really crank these down. I'm not sure about the front one, which is what this one is, but the back one I really went pretty tight on it, and there was no binding. It was really smooth. So I'm hoping that's the same thing with the front. Now, if it is a little bit too tight, you can either back off the screws just a little bit, or you can take out that little washer, because that was basically spacing the differential gear over to be tighter with the input or the pinion gear. And of course, make sure that you're using Loctite so that these don't back out. So now that I got this put together, I did want to let you know, you can kind of hear it is not very smooth. So I'm going to try backing off the screws just a little bit, or maybe taking out that thin little washer. But right now this would not be acceptable. It's too tight. It's too tight. That's what she said. So I took the tiny little washer spacer out, and once I got the case put back together, it's nice and smooth now. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that out because obviously with it in there was a little bit too tight. So the front and rear differentials have now been swapped out along with the CVD drive. So now the only thing that is left is to go test this darn thing. All right, so here we go with the Kraton or the Kraton 3S, depending on what you want to consider it. This time we're running 6S, like I talked about before. I've got the Mamba X speed controller and the 2400 kV motor, and I've got two 3S batteries shoved in there. So we are running 6S. Now I will be honest here, I did actually run 6S already on the street. It is very difficult to control. The front comes up almost immediately, and I was flipping it over going like 30-40 miles an hour doing wheelies, and it slide on the roof and scrape stuff up. But it did work okay, but I want to do some more test runs on 6S here. Now it seems like it's kind of ridiculous to be running 6S on this truck, but it is capable, and I wanted to hopefully show that the differentials and the CVD drives are going to hold up. So obviously long term I don't know, but let's do a little bit of testing here and see how well it does.
Crap. That ain't good.
Woo! Okay, well, apparently my battery Velcro is not working very well. But like you see, it gets the front wheels up really quick. So let me try to re-secure that, I guess. And that's not even full throttle. If I go full throttle, the front end just comes up immediately.
Ooh, that don't sound good.
Hopefully, just a stick or dirt.
Hopefully dirt.
I think it's the spur gear. So I think it's the spur gear. I have a few teeth missing on there, but I guess we'll just keep driving until it's totally stripped. This is the 3S version, so I don't have the metal spur gear like the 4S versions, and apparently I need to change that. Right there's a couple that are kind of chipped. Right there a little bit. Good times. Okay, so that didn't last too long. Like I mentioned before, the spur gear is now completely stripped out. I didn't get a lot of passes in, but we did get a little bit of driving in. The differentials and the CV drives are still functioning. Obviously long term I don't know how well it's going to hold up, but I'm not normally going to run 6S because it's pretty ridiculous in this truck. It instantly flips over, but if you were doing a few high-speed runs or something, maybe. But it's kind of nice to see that at least the temporary small amount of abuse that it went through today, it did withstand. So I'll keep you guys updated with what's going on with that, but in the meantime it seems like a pretty good thing. You want to go with the metal diffs as well as the differential yokes to really make sure that those differentials are held in place and that you don't end up stripping those out, or at least you give them a good chance of survival. The fact that guys are having decent luck with the plastic diffs lets me know that the metal ones should be awesome. So now really the main weak link, other than that spur gear, which I'll get swapped out, is going to be the plastic drive shaft in the middle. And the slipper clutch, of course, a lot of people have issues with. So far mine has been okay. It's a lot of Loctite, and make sure you let that stuff dry. And then obviously the metal spur will hopefully help out. But I think that's pretty much it for today, but it definitely does seem to work. So of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below if you have any questions, and then I'll keep you guys updated with how this thing is holding up.